Oh, that's really good. And you haven't even had coffee or lunch yet. That's a great start. For those of you that were here earlier, had the opportunity to listen to the Ken Weaver Trio, an affiliate with the Jazz Arts Group. So how about giving them a round of applause? My name's Hal Kettler. I'm president of Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing, and Isabel Toth and I are going to be doing some tag team emceeing today. But welcome to the 10th anniversary of the Community Properties of Ohio Initiative, the CPO Initiative. Celebration of 10 years of transforming neighborhoods and lives through the collective effort known as the CPO Initiative. Many of the people in this room have been a key part of our work together over the last decade. And it's entirely appropriate that to provide the invocation today, we bring up Lou Seipel, pastor with Broad Street United Methodist Church. And some of you might be confused as Lou comes up, because doesn't Lou work at CPO? Well, indeed, she did for a number of years. Lou, as an ordained Methodist minister, took a time out of her busy career in the church to be director of supportive service and really spearheaded many of our innovative things that we did for our residents. So it's my pleasure to introduce Lou Seipel.
I want you to know that working with CPO was the most transformational 8 years of my entire career. So I thank you for that. There's an elderly gentleman in my congregation, 93 years old, with the sparkliest blue eyes you've ever seen. I hadn't been at the church very long when on a Sunday morning I was bopping up the aisle before church started, and I just bent down and I did a drive-by smooching on him. I do that. Several weeks later, he came back to me and said, I need to tell you something. I said, well, what's that? He said, well, I grew up with 3 maiden aunts who lacked any sense of nurture for me, and I was 8 years old before I even knew I had a mother. It was that rare moment when that drive-by smooching clicked in his spirit what a mother's love must feel like. It's a rare thing to know that you've made a difference in someone's life. Well, the CPO 10th anniversary is a visible evidence of a transformational work. You can see it. The tremendous benefits of thoughtful investment, visionary planning, community cooperation, the long-range plans of the city and OSU, strong management, and the investment in lives by so many. But I'm here to tell you, you will never know, ever, the impact that you have had on people's lives, on the generations of lives. And that is why we pray. Let's pray. God of many names, God of all people, we give thanks for the way you have blessed the efforts of so many to make a measurable difference. While it looks like housing and community development to us, it looks like kingdom building to you. Where it looks like investment and vision to us, it has the sweet reach of compassion and care in your eyes. This has been more than community investment. It is the responsible care of God's people for those we call neighbors and those you call family. Now let us never feel rain, for each will be sheltered by the other. Let us never feel cold, for each will be the warmth to the other. Let there never be loneliness, for each of us has the ability and capacity to companion the other. Where we may think of ourselves as individuals, there are 3 lives here: our life, the life of the other, and the life we have together. Now take us to dwell in these places as God's people, where hope is not a strategy, luck is not a factor, and fear nor failure is an option. Amen.
Thanks, Lou. April 23rd, 2003, day we remember well, don't we, Isabel? We actually closed on the Broad Street Management acquisition. You'll hear more about that later on. And we became the city's largest slumlord overnight, which is something that we've worked for the last decade to correct and to improve. We purchased a management company. We took control of 250 buildings in various states of disrepair, and the work began. Over the last 10 years together, we have rehabbed over 1,000 affordable housing units. At the same time, given our commitment and the Campus Partners Plan, we freed up buildings in areas of concentrated poverty for market rate development to assist in neighborhood revitalization. We used to talk, and we haven't talked about this at CPO for a while, about legs of the table. Remember that? We talked about the legs of the table, the 4 elements for a successful effort, which included quality rehabilitation, construction, property management, strict compliance, safety, and you'll be hearing about the Elements program and the partnership with the Division of Police, and supportive services, because at the end of the day, it's about the residents and giving residents a stable, safe place to live. Many of the speakers in the room are directly responsible for our success, as well as people that aren't going to be speaking today, but are very much appreciated. And what do I mean by success? We're all about metrics and measuring, but CPO properties went from being some of the worst buildings in the neighborhood to some of the best. The neighborhood organizations that actually, some of them actually filed lawsuit against ourselves, the Campus Partners, Ohio State, the city, to try to stop this development, now embrace us and applaud the hard work of CPO management staff. Criminal activity in our properties, around our properties, dropped by 80%, and actually in the brochure you have, it shows by year the hard work of off-duty police officers, how it's paid off. Retention, stability, and retention dropped significantly from 80% to significantly less, 30% or less. CPO is no longer the housing of last resort. It's a place that people choose to live. The sort of supportive services staff work with folks to keep them in housing. And most importantly, we have a sustainable financial model where out of the operations we pay for security and we pay for supportive services. Now, at the end of the day, none of this would have been possible without the active support, the vision of Campus Partners at Ohio State, who designed the plan that OCCH executed, the political support and leadership from the mayor and city council, the financial support of HUD, the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, the city, and others, neighborhood leadership in our 7 neighborhoods, and we'll be hearing from Joyce Hughes later on, one of our great partners, active cooperation with the Columbus Division of Police, and the commitment and the bravery of the officers that serve with us, and support from philanthropic community as CPO engaged in innovative and very aggressive programs, including the Columbus Foundation, United Way, and the Chase Foundation. So let's hear from some of these critical partners, starting with our leader, the Mayor of the City of Columbus, Mayor Michael B. Coleman. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Hal, and it's so great to be here 10 years later, because believe it or not, I was there 10 years ago at this very moment when this was all put together. And I'm so proud of what has happened in the meantime. And I have to thank Ohio Capital Corporation, Hal Kettler, everybody that's been engaged here so much. And I remember this was because I was there, as many of you were there. A crisis, an emergency. Something had to be done right then and there. And people stepped up. And that's the great thing about the city of Columbus. When there's a crisis, an emergency, people step up. And so I remember the home dollars that was put into this. I'm somewhere around $5 million. Yeah, I never forget a figure. City council had to approve that, as I recall. And so we thank city council for that. But this was a rescue. This was an absolute rescue when people are drowning and you're in the Titanic and you're trying to find a way to rescue a group of folks. The CPO was put together and has resulted in, of course, the saving of the buildings. But more important than that, the saving of lives, giving people hope, giving people promise, giving people pride, giving them empowerment and a way up and a way out, providing safety for them throughout the community. The police officers and the work to ensure that the community was safer made a huge difference to those who lived in the units and those who lived in the neighborhoods where the units were located. So actually, the arrest by CPO officers has decreased by 83% between 2005 and 2010. The best thing about this is that when I walk the neighborhoods where some of these 1,000 now beautiful units are, I see kids playing in the backyard. I see people on the front porch. I see people who no longer are looking behind their back as to who's coming at them, but looking forward to the future, knowing that their lives will be improved as a result of this effort. This was a transformational effort, and this is one of the great successes of our community. So congratulations, 10 years. We've come a long way, and I want to thank everybody who was engaged and responsible for taking a piece of this and making it work for our citizens and those who live in the units. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mayor. And the mayor was a true champion. Before he even took over the portfolio, he hosted a summit of social service agencies to figure out how to work with our residents. As the mayor mentioned, City Council was actively involved. Steve Sterrett worked for Campus Partners, and I spent many time briefing City Council. You can't redevelop 200-plus buildings without a couple of variances, a couple of zoning changes, and Council was there and very supportive of us. So it's my pleasure to introduce the President of Columbus City Council, Council Member Andrew Ginther.
Good morning. I am thrilled to be here this morning representing your City Council. And although the mayor was in his position when this all began 10 years ago, I was not. So I need to give credit to former Council President Matt Habash and former Council Member and current State Senator Charlita Tavares for having the vision and the courage and the commitment to help us collaborate and work together in making the difference we have in this community. Council's thrilled to be here to honor and recognize CPO on their 10th anniversary and the major positive impact they've had in the community. The CPO initiative is a clear example of multiple partners coming together to impact Columbus neighborhoods. The story of Columbus is a story of partnership. In our community, the public, private, and nonprofit sectors work together to strengthen our neighborhoods and create opportunities for our residents. CPO's success is proof that effective partnerships can improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. By engaging a broad and diverse group of partners, CPO has been able to rehabilitate hundreds of residences and change thousands of lives for the better. I won't run down the entire list of CPO's partners. I know many of you represent those organizations, have been part of that. But I want you to know, on behalf of Columbus City Council, we thank you for your support and commitment to CPO's success. We all need to do our part and make the investments in our neighborhoods that will encourage others to step up and do their part. Quite honestly, Council has followed the lead of CPO by investing in key strategic initiatives in neighborhoods, and they've proven to be great returns on investment. Under Joyce Hughes' leadership in Wyland Park, we've installed safety cameras that have helped reduce crime in Wyland Park, once the most dangerous part of our city, by 33%. Joyce, thank you for your leadership and all of your work on behalf of your neighbors. And by joining in a major effort to revitalize the South Side, including building the new Maloney Health Center and transforming the former Reeb School into a central location for important social services. We're funding a new retail incubator in Linden to provide an outlet for area vendors and support the overall retail market in that community. We've also funding infrastructure improvements and site cleanups in Franklinton to support the renaissance of our city's first neighborhood, the place where it all began in Franklinton. All of us, including the city, need to continue to do our part. And on behalf of Council, I'm here today to recognize the great accomplishments of the last 10 years and make a renewed commitment to stand with you over the next 10 years and beyond as we continue to help transform neighborhoods and improve the lives of the people of Columbus. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, thanks. And, Ohio Capital Corporation, many of you know we work throughout Ohio and Kentucky, and it is so nice to come home to Columbus where people actually work together and get a lot of things done, including this beautiful building we're in today. Well, one way to look upon this is really a HUD deal. So we're going to talk about HUD here. What really triggered this was the need to refinance these buildings, and it's really the vision of Campus Partners that sort of pulled it together. Without the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I think these sort of transactions, what we did here out of the box is sort of an understatement. We reconfigured HAP contracts, we restructured $25 million worth of debt with HUD, and without the active support of the folks in Washington, but most importantly, the folks in the Columbus field office, this would not have been possible. So it's my pleasure to introduce Randolph Wilson, Hub Director of the Columbus HUD office. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm feeling pretty old about this project now because I remember back in 2003 when Hal and OCCH approached the office and talked about purchasing a 1,300 unit portfolio known as Broad Street Management. We really thought they were crazy. Yeah, it was a tough portfolio, but at that time OCCH had a vision, and after some extensive talks and participation in the campus partners meetings, I think we just collectively drank the Kool-Aid, if you will. and now it's wonderful to see what has happened. We transformed that 1,300 units into 1,000 units of renovated housing, primarily utilizing our 223F and 221D4 mortgage insurance programs. Currently, I think we have about $21.5 million in the projects, which is pale in comparison to the amount of tax credit equity that's been leveraged through the redevelopment of these projects. I think OCCH and their partner, Red Capital, which was the lender on all of their transactions, as a matter of fact, I think we refinanced 3 transactions yesterday, hold the record in our office for the number of closings in one day. I think one day we did 13 closings, and we haven't eclipsed that since. So it's been a long road, but a very productive road. We value the opportunity to support such an innovative partnership as with OCCH and in the creation of CPO, because the impact that CPO has had on lives is just very important in terms of enhancing the quality of resident lives, as well as having a catalytic effect on neighborhood revitalization. CPO the initiative itself is clearly an example of affordable housing being leveraged to the benefit of the city and neighborhoods and families as well. Quality affordable housing is a great need and continues to be a great need in our community around the country. This is a wonderful example of how housing can be leveraged as a community asset, both in terms of rehabilitation quality and the quality of ongoing management through CPO. The CPO initiative is also a clear demonstration of how collaborative partnership can produce dramatic results. So we'd like to thank HAL and OCCH for their vision, CPO for just stellar, exemplary management, Red Capital, OFA, the city, and all of our partners who have helped to make this initiative a successful one. And on behalf of the department, I'd like to congratulate CPO for its first 10 years and wish them many, 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 many more. Thank you.
Thanks, Randolph, and Patricia Richardson. I'd like to give a shout out to her, and Alan Copeland, who is at HUD and now retired and looking very good. Alan, look very relaxed. Great to see you. When we look at taking over this portfolio and originally engaged with campus partners, we needed to figure out what's the end game. Certainly acquiring and managing these properties was certainly not not the end game. What we really needed to do is amass capital to invest in them. And without the active support of the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, because remember, we didn't have any commitments. The Housing Finance Agency can't make forward commitments. You just have to trust that this very important arm of state government will continue to advance public policy and fund good projects. So actually 7 different phases of tax credit transactions with other community partners like Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, Community Housing Network, and Homeport. But without OFA's support early with a $3 million loan to get us the first 331-unit project off the ground and ongoing funding of these important preservation deals, we wouldn't be here today. And we're just very blessed to have a professional, highly competent, and inspiring Ohio Housing Finance Agency. It's my honor to introduce my good friend Doug Garver, Executive Director of the Ohio Housing Finance Agency.
Good morning. And Hal, thank you for those kind words and also for the invitation to take part on this special day, this special event that marks the 10th anniversary of CPO. For the last 30 years, OFA has worked with its partners to implement creative solutions that address affordable housing needs and advance our shared mission to help those who need it most. I am very, very proud this morning to be in the company of leaders who are committed to this common purpose and this shared cause. Our agency recognizes the importance of public-private partnerships, and for nearly 24 years has worked closely with the Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing to provide safe, decent, affordable housing for low and moderate income families here in Columbus and across our great state. Since 1989, OCCH has been a reliable force in Ohio's housing market, raising $2.5 billion in equity investments, financing more than 550 projects, and assisting in the creation and preservation of more than 30,000 affordable housing units. 30,000. It's a very big number. Impressive results, to say the least. But you know, there is something else that I've always admired and respected about OCCH that doesn't show up on any spreadsheet or in any financial statement. And that is a willingness to push the envelope and take manageable risk to drive their mission and make a difference in local neighborhoods and in the lives of the residents that all of us in this room serve. To that end, OCCH undertook an effort that I would suspect was outside its comfort zone 10 years ago by forming Community Properties of Ohio to acquire, rehabilitate, and manage more than 1,000 units of affordable housing here in Central Ohio, the largest scattered site Section 8 housing portfolio in the nation. How I can only imagine, since we both work with boards and with very creative staffs, I can imagine the discussions and the debate that took place in the halls and in the offices and in the boardroom at OCCH. Once that decision was made, I am pleased to note that OFA assisted in the financing of the CPO initiative with more than $7.3 million in tax credits and $3.5 million in loans. This investment reflects the trust that we have in OCCH and CPO to do what they say they are going to do, and just importantly, to do it right. Hal and Isabel, OFA appreciates the outstanding work that you and your teams do in Ohio as a tax credit syndicator, a proven asset manager, a champion for special needs housing and the preservation of affordable housing, and a creative and trusted financing partner. Congratulations on this special day and the work that you have done, and we look forward to future opportunities to drive our shared mission, addressing a basic human need through the provision of safe, decent, affordable housing. Thank you.
As Isabel comes up, my partner in crime, Isabel Toth, I'd just like to point out that we do have some Ohio Capital Corporation board members here, if you could stand. Dennis Guest, Grady Appleton, and Bob Wyler. I think people know these folks. Dennis was at the Housing Authority when we partnered with them on CPO. But it is my absolute pleasure to introduce people that know CPO, know that Isabel is the heart and soul of this initiative. So please join me in welcoming Isabel.
Well, good morning. I love it when a plan comes together, don't you? Boy, oh boy, I think back about 10 years, well, actually it was probably like 12 years ago, and weren't really sure, but we were committed. So today we celebrate, and I just want to thank everyone who's taken time out of their busy day to come and celebrate with us. I've had so many phone calls and so many emails and personal notes congratulating us and thanking us for what we've done and for the partnership that we've had with various individuals and organizations that could not be here today because they are off doing their own mission. So it's really been very heartfelt for me to be here. When you think about 10 years of relationships and partnerships and stories and memories, it's really hard to put that into a brief presentation. Well, we really appreciate those who have participated today, and then also many, many folks who were willing and participated in an interview process of about 6 hours of videotaping. And they took time to talk about the CPO story and to share. But trying to reduce 6 hours or maybe more, you guys, into like 4 or 5 minutes, wow, that was an enormous task. So we thank everyone who participated. We want you to know that we plan to use that footage to expand the video for other purposes. It really has been a gift to CPO and OCCH. So with that, I'd like to introduce our video that tells a different side of our story.
Jacob was just a baby. He had just turned 1 year old. We were homeless. So I've seen.
Thank you, and again, thank you to everyone who participated. Next, I would like to introduce Terry Fogler. He's the former Vice President of Physical Planning and Real Estate. He was with Campus Partners, where this all began. And Campus Partners was created for community and urban redevelopment from The Ohio State University. And when you look at an initiative this huge, there's always kind of one visionary that gets it kicked off. Where it ends up years later is a part of that whole community involvement. But Terry really was that person, along with his colleagues, Doug Aschenbach and Steve Sterrett, who is on his way back from the Dominican Republic as we speak, and others for even, 2+ years before we actually got to the OCCH and CPO part. Really rolling up your sleeves to assist with the due diligence that it takes in understanding the magnitude of something this large. So Terry is truly a visionary and a leader, and he has been a great partner to Ohio Capital Corporation and CPO and never lets us down. Terry Fogler?
I think this notion of plans being successfully implemented is something that as a planner we take particular pride in. I noticed in the publication that you all were given there, it made reference to the various awards, but one of the awards not in there is an award that was actually given to Campus Partners for the American Planning Association and the Wyland Park Initiative. And that planning effort actually was the national award winner for plan implementation nationwide. That's all plans everywhere for folks in city planning, neighborhood planning. And that was due to the CPO effort. This was the catalytic piece. When I joined Campus Partners in 1996, and we started to look at the planning efforts that had been done, there was a plan that had 250 recommendations in it. We were trying to figure out, where do you possibly begin? And the notion was focus on those things that can be most catalytic. And the thing that we continually heard was that the path that the Broad Street portfolio is on is among the most destructive influences to these neighborhoods, and we need to find something to do about that. We brought in an expert, Peter Roach from Boston, and we asked Peter, what's the scenarios here given this mark-to-market process that we are hearing about with these private owner developers if this continues? And the picture that got painted was extremely bleak. Very little investment, continued private ownership, no supportive services, and to the extent that the property had been housing of last resort for its previous numbers of years, it would be increasingly destabilizing on its current path. Anything that we would choose to do in the Wyland Park neighborhoods, and we think others would do in the highly impacted neighborhood, would be, we feel, almost impossible if that were to continue. But to impact this, you actually have to get control of this portfolio so that as you approach Ohio Capital or approach HUD or other stakeholders, you've got something to deal with. So probably our highest level of audacity, I guess, came in having Pete work with us to tie up this portfolio. And not only is it the 1,300 units that I think were in Central Ohio, I believe it was 1,800 units in 3 states, that the entire portfolio. I never did ask how would you do with your Kentucky product or your Georgia product that was part of this. I need an update on that piece. And speaking of going to boards to tell them that you've just tied up the largest scattered site Section 8 portfolio in the country in 3 different states, and telling the Board of Trustees at Ohio State that you've done that, also had to be done from the perspective that we knew we couldn't implement it. And we said, we're tying this up for the perspective, hoping we can find a partner that can make this happen. And luckily, as the plan emerged, stakeholders were brought to the table, and these key principles of significant rehabilitation, nonprofit ownership, high level of supportive services, the safety programs and other things that you've heard so much about, got wide level acceptance and were bought into. And Hal and his group emerged as saying, we haven't done this before, but we think given all the needs and the potentials and the opportunities and the broader benefits to the community, we're willing to take that on, was extraordinarily important. And really what made this vision that got wide level buy-in from really everyone we had at the table, from neighborhoods throughout the city, BRED, housing advocates, low-income housing advocates, as well as neighborhood revitalization advocates who were concerned about poverty concentration. There were a lot of stakeholders' interests who had to be balanced on this. I think if you look at the impacts of this, however, in terms of how transformational it can be, you're hearing lots of stories in terms of how it's doing that with individual people's lives, and that's clearly the most important. From Campus Partners' perspective, there is nothing Campus Partners engaged in that was important to the neighborhood districts around the university as this initiative. This is by far the most important and the most transformational. I think it is the thing that got the school district's comfort level where it was in building the elementary school. I think it was the thing that got other philanthropic entities like Chase and Columbus Foundation and others engaged in these efforts. I think it's the thing that ultimately gave folks a comfort level to say, let's get control of the Columbus Coated Fabric site and start to get developers and others engaged in a market where we have now stabilized and improved significantly what was the most destabilizing influence in that neighborhood. Again, my thanks to all the stakeholders who've helped advance this, particularly Ohio Capital and their team, Hal and Isabel. I think it's a shining example to be able to demonstrate that these visions, when good, capable people with good objectives, well thought out strategic plans can come together, that they can be successful, they can have the kind of impacts that people hope that they will. And I think the transformation in these neighborhoods will do nothing but continue. Our expectation is Ohio State will continue to stay fully engaged in these efforts. I think through programs like the Annie Casey Foundation Initiative and others going forward, they are a member of these neighborhoods and need to be an important stakeholder moving forward. I appreciate the opportunity to have played a role. Thank you all.
Well, the next person needs no introduction. However, many of you know Joyce Hughes. And Joyce is the president of the Wyland Park Civic Association. And the partnership and the collaboration with Joyce and the Civic Association in Wyland Park is representative of many such relationships that we have developed throughout the other neighborhoods that we've worked in. Joyce and the Civic Association continue to give voice to the larger community. They address what is or was or isn't working, and our work together has improved communication and collaboration in both directions. Joyce?
First of all, I'd like to say that I am humbly honored to be before you this morning, and I thank Hal and Isabel so much for asking me. And on the lighter side of things, Isabel sent me an email that said 3 minutes. And Barno's not here to tell me to shut up. So here we go. I see Susan down there, so maybe she'll do it. But I'd like to say that the theme was the need, the impact, and the vision. Based upon the theme that this program is building on, it is for that reason that we are proud to have CPO as our partner, and we are really happy to have our CPO neighbors. Now, for CPO, they're residents, but for me, they're my neighbors, and they are so grateful to be in housing that is decent and that is extremely safe. And CPO worked with, when they came in, I know Isabel said, "Can you believe it's been 10 years?" I said, "No, it seems longer." It seems so much longer. Because we've worked so hard, and the staff that CPO has sent into all the neighborhoods. So all the neighborhoods are great, but I'm talking about Wyland Park. We're the greatest. They sent their staff in to work with my neighbors and to work with the Civic Association and to work with those people who do not have the opportunity to live in the fine housing stock that CPO provides in Wyland Park. And that collaborative effort it's phenomenal. It's not something that normally happens because it's usually us against them. And we're fortunate to have that. And by them coming into our neighborhood and taking on the challenge, again, Hal and Isabel, I thank you for deciding to be the biggest slum landlords that ever took on this challenge. When they came into our neighborhood, they wanted everyone to be safe. And by establishing the Eliminate the Elements, and then they're further going into safe neighborhood initiatives for the young people in our neighborhood. By establishing those, developing relationships with my neighbors who live in their property, who are not necessarily the most trusting people in the world. CPO took the extra step, and in taking that extra step, let my neighbors know that you're not down and out. You are very important. We want you to improve the quality of your life. We want you to take advantage of opportunities that are available to everyone else. And CPO took that challenge. They didn't have to do that. You've heard all the powerful and important people come up and talk about how, what it took to get it started, the brain power, all of that. Those are the important people, but I want you to understand that all the brain power in the world wouldn't have mattered if these people hadn't cared to come together to try to improve the quality of life for people who had no hope. And here again, we got CPO steadily working. Now, I don't know how you guys are doing anyplace else, but you're doing great in Wyland Park and in the city of Columbus. We've had a dramatic change. You hear the 80%. You heard our president talk about a 33% decrease in crime in Wyland Park. This is all because CPO came in with a vision. They wanted to make an impact, and they wanted to have a positive vision for my neighborhood and other neighborhoods to have a transforming neighborhood that has everybody with the same opportunity to move ahead and to live and to be safe. And building on that foundation, we in Wyland Park look forward to the continued participation of CPO. Now, I want you all to know, in closing, that I told the police officer, I heard my name just one time too many up here, Joyce. No, it's not necessarily Joyce. It's Joyce's neighbors. If my neighbors don't support me, if my neighbors don't tell me what it is that they want, need, and have to have, so that I can go to all the powerful and important people and say, we want, need, and have to have, Wyland Park wouldn't be making the changes. I remember Terry and Doug and Steve and Isabel and Hal. They came together with a plan. When they came to us about the plan, they knew the plan wouldn't work if the people didn't embrace. And these people opened their hearts to my neighbors. These people who you've heard listened to what my neighbors wanted and needed and had to have. And because of that, CPO is a much better place, and I'm very proud. It's the first time I saw the video, and I'm very proud to see that there were so many of my neighbors on the movies. And I am so proud, and I'm hoping that we get a chance to play that at next month's Civic Association so that my neighbors can see that they are stars. And I'd like to say in closing that I thank all of the brilliant minds who came together to encourage Hal and Isabel to take the big leap, because in transforming my neighborhood from a neighborhood of last resort to a neighborhood of choice, they have done a wonderful job, and I thank them so much. And I can't see anything but a continued collaboration. And Isabel was being kind. Everything that they have done in our neighborhood has been continuous improvement. And they have come to us saying, is this working? Is this not working? How can we affect? And I thank you, Hal. I thank you, Isabel. And thank you, everybody. Did I do 3 minutes?
Thank you, Joyce. The next person I would like to introduce does relate to this. You've heard a lot about this eliminate the elements. And when we took a look at this portfolio, this housing of last resort, the criminal activity and so forth, quite honestly, I was a little scared. And knew that we could not do this without a real commitment that related to police enforcement. We also knew that the city was not able to dedicate those resources to us, individually. So this next person that I want to introduce, Deputy Chief of Police Jeff Blackwell, is a person that, you talk to so-and-so and so-and-so, and they lead you to this person, and they led me to Jeff. And I don't know, Jeff, if you remember that first conversation, but when I was explaining to him who we were and what we were trying to do and what I really needed, I'm sure he probably thought, who is this woman and what does she want from me? But through his support, he was able to get us an audience with the Director of Safety, Mitch Brown, and his staff, and of course the support of the mayor, and we were able to talk about what it is we needed to do in a very, very intentional way. And so out of all of that came the Eliminate the Elements program that we talk about. We have many of our officers here today, and we are grateful to them for the work that they do. This is not your grandma's off-duty officer program, I can tell you that. So with that, I'd like to welcome Deputy Chief Jeff Blackwell. Thank you.
And I do remember saying to Rob Vass, who do you have calling me? She was very, very persistent, but I'm from a CPO neighborhood. And there are so many young champions, young future leaders, great kids that just need the opportunity to be able to navigate their way out of those places, so that they can be all that they can be, that they were designed to be. The role of police in our community is changing. And we talk about models, and model for this, traditional police model, strict enforcement and all of those things. But without relationship and trust, and I'm talking about the relationship between people in the community and the police officers that serve that community, if they don't know one another and trust one another, it won't work. You see, in these communities that are so vibrant now, we didn't add any police officers. In fact, there are less officers there now than there were probably 10 years ago. It's just a different type of officer there now and a different type of commitment. They've built sustainable relationships with people. They know each other on a personal basis. They know Rob Vass and Anthony Johnson, and they knew Thad Alexander and the sergeants and the great officers in the back from SRB. They know them personally. So if you only have a model that's the big me, little you, if you only have a model where police authority tells you what we're going to do in your neighborhood to make you safe, it won't work, and you won't be safe. It only works when there is a mutually inclusive set of values. You know, I tell a story all the time, and not to knock on any one community, but between Nelson Road and Gould Avenue lies a community that has very little crime. The east side of Columbus surrounds this community. And I tell people all the time when I'm out talking, why is it that crime is really high on East Broad Street around East High School and Franklin Park, and it's super high once you get to Gould and James and all of that, but there's no crime in between? Is Bexley PD that good? Are they better than us? And if anyone lives in Bexley, I'm not saying anything bad. They're not better than the men and women from the Columbus Division of Police. They just have different community expectations. The community there will only tolerate certain things. For example, about 10 years ago, we were looking for a weapon used in a homicide that we had information that may have been thrown in the creek right there at the bridge before you get to St. Charles. We had our crime scene people down there with waders and metal detectors, and they found 32 guns in the water. 32 guns in the water. People driving from crime in Columbus East Side, and they realize I have to go through Bexley. Let me get rid of this. They throw this thing out the window. Don't want to take that chance. As a young commander, I was at one of my roll calls with all of my young champions standing there, and I'm always trying to preach the fact that you have to know the people that you serve. And I asked all of the officers when they were standing at attention, and they were all so neat and prim, and I said, okay, I just want one officer to tell me any person's name on your district or on your beat that you know that's not a criminal. And no one said a word. No one had a name. You see, we get so caught up in the crime fighting aspect of policing that we forget about the relationship part, about the good people, which is 99% of all communities, Wyland Park included. So we're excited about the opportunity to partner and to show a different side of policing, to show a side of policing where officers are involved with the community, where people trust us to do the right thing, where they trust us if we have to be firm. Because Rob Vass sitting here, he's cleaned up right now. He's got his medals on, and he looks really clean. But that guy and his partner, Anthony Johnson, are probably two of the premier gang officers in the United States, and they can get as tough as they have to be. But the beautiful part about how they enforce the law is they do it fairly, and they do it with respect. So, and he wanted me to mention that he wants to brand. He has a branding quote for this entire initiative. And he said if anybody steals it, he will take exception and maybe file legal charges. He wants to say that this initiative is putting the neighbor back in neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you to all of our officers who are here and the ones that are still on duty for their commitment to the Eliminate the Elements program, to our residents and to our neighborhoods. Thank you very much. The next person I want to introduce is Doug Kreidler, President and CEO of the Columbus Foundation. Without the many funders who have truly understood the impact of this concept of community initiative that CPO has been for the past 10 years, the transformation that we speak of today would never, ever have been a possibility. Our continued partnership with the Columbus Foundation and their staff, Lisa Cordes, Michael Wilkos, and I'll mention Steve Sterrett, even though he's not technically a staff member, but he has an office there, and we work very closely together, has really been a blessing to CPO, our residents, and the greater communities that make up the great city of Columbus. Thank you for your continued leadership, and particularly for your bold investment in Wyland Park. Doug?
Well, good morning. Good afternoon. My participation in today's program was to announce a major new initiative in town. It's called Putting the Neighbor Back in the Neighborhood. All of the funders have gotten together. We're really excited about it. What do you think of the tagline? I think it'll be smooth sailing from here on. Obviously, I'm the envy of every other speaker because I'm the 11th speaker. So point by point, my talking points have been taken. I won't repeat them. I just want to lift up two things, and one of them is going to take audience participation. The first is obviously congratulations to Isabel and to Hal for this remarkable decade of service to our community that exhibits both excellence and a care for others that is an inspiration to many. But I want to reflect on a story that I think many of you have heard us tell over the last few months, and that is the first woman to fly solo around the world. If you were to ask that, and if you haven't heard this story, you might say Amelia Earhart or whatever. It was a Columbus resident. Her name was Jerry Mock. And 49 years ago, she flew around the world in an 11-year-old Cessna airplane by herself, the first woman in the history of the world to do that. She took off from Port Columbus. She returned to Port Columbus, a Columbus residence. So when we reflect on Isabel's often stated charge that failure is not an option, I would use that reflection of that accomplishment when you have a single-engine plane and you're going across the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Failure is clearly not an option. So, first of all, I want to celebrate that courage that it takes to say that and determine it and go for it. The second thing I want to mention is on the side of that plane was written the name of that plane, and it was the Spirit of Columbus. So this is where you come in. I have three things to lift up, and I'd like you to join me. When I say that's you say Spirit of Columbus. Let's try this. That's the Spirit of Columbus. All right, you got some spirit. We're going to get there. So, to CPO for having the courage to take on one of the most challenged housing portfolios in our city. That's the Spirit of Columbus. To CPO for finding solutions to complicated things because they matter. That's the and to CPO for having the standard of excellence and the care and the work that they do throughout all of their work in their care for others. That's the Spirit of Columbus. We're proud to be your partner. We're proud to today represent the other funders who wouldn't have come to this neighborhood if they weren't inspired and impressed by the work that preceded us in those early investments. So to Hal and to Isabel, and I know that I always cringe when just I am identified as the Columbus Foundation. So I want to also say to Hal's staff and to Isabel's staff and everybody that's worked with them, thank you very much. We're proud to be your partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I like that. That's the Spirit of Columbus. I like that better than OH. It narrows it down a little. The next person that I am absolutely honored to introduce is one of our residents. I really wish that we could have you hear the stories of each and every one of our residents. They are the reason that I get up in the morning, that the staff does what we do. Their stories are not always pretty. They're certainly not always fun. And in so many ways, so many of us could not even imagine, could not even relate to the journey that they have been on. But I would like for you to hear from one of our stellar residents. Jessica has been with us. She moved in, I believe, in 2006 before the renovation took place, lived through that, and is now just recently, last week, in fact, we were having a hard time tracking her down, turned in her keys and has moved on to conventional housing. So I'm going to let her tell you the rest of her story.
Good afternoon and welcome all. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of such a great celebration. I come here today to share my experience as a resident for several years at CPO. I am hoping that each and every one of you leave here today with great gratitude for what you have and an inspiration for the future. In 2006, I was a working mother, pregnant and practically homeless. That's when I found the CPO housing program. It was very comforting to know that I could afford to pay for housing and have something left over to take care of other needs. Moving into the CPO housing meant that I once again could have something that I could call my own. I could give my family a home. In addition to having a safe and a clean place to live, CPO also helped me find furniture and utility assistance and other resources I would need as a low-income mother. I moved in the unit before the renovations started, and I was quite surprised because out of all my years of living and renting off of people, I never had a landlord come and want to make things better. And I really thought he was a little touched, but I said, we're going to roll with it. You know, we're going to get with this right here, okay? But that was confirmation for me that CPO really cared. I found that CPO was just not only a housing program to help people of low incomes, but it was also a resource center. In life, we all go through a crisis. And in my crisis, my husband was dying, and CPO was there to support me and put me in the right direction of people who I could talk to, who could assist me, because I was now going to become a single parent. Well, after 7 years, it was really hard for me to say goodbye to CPO. I had a very strong personal relationship with some of the staff. They were always willing to go above and beyond the call of duty in order to assist me in anything I needed. So our relationship was kind of not really like a landlord-tenant relationship. It was really bonding. As Elizabeth stated, I last week turned in my keys. And I'm living in conventional housing. At the present time, I'm working on entrepreneurial opportunities, and I want to increase my income. I believe I can achieve anything thanks to CPO. There's no stopping me now. Once again, I'd like to say thank you to Isabella and CPO for giving me that great leg up, okay? And it was very nice to know that I didn't have to do all this alone and that there were people there to support me. And thank you for your time.
There is so much more to that story, and all of the stories really do think that that is the gift to the work that I do personally and the work of the CPO staff is to really get to know folks up close and personal. To come to work every day and do a job is one thing, but to really be able to see the difference is a gift. So thank you again, Jessica, for participating. Okay, our last speaker, everyone. Our last speaker. I am going to introduce Chad Kettler, who is our Chief Operating Officer. And I have to tell you that Chad was with the previous management company for about 6 months or so before we actually bought the management company and started down this path. And I will tell you that if I had to pick one thing out about Chad to share, it would be that he was our go-to guy from the beginning. We had a lot of complaints legitimate complaints from residents, from neighbors, from regulatory agencies, you name it. And our goal to start out with, when Hal and I went around and talked to all the civic associations and said, hey, we could be your new best friend, could you trust us for just a minute? They were angry, rightfully so, but we made a commitment that the word on the street was Broad Street never calls you back, they don't do anything, nobody responds, so forth and so on. So we immediately put in place that we would respond to calls within 24 hours, and we recorded all of those, we documented all of those, we followed up on all of those. And Chad, along with the staff, but Chad was really our go-to guy to say, look, here's what's being reported. And Chad's style of dealing with that is to be very calm, to be very responsive, very timely, but to really listen, to hear what the issue is that's being presented, and then to dig deep, kind of like a little terrier, you know, digging for a bone. That would be Chad, to find out the... I love you, Chad, I love you, but you know, he's a digger, and he would get to the facts, only the facts, ma'am. And because of his style and because of his responsiveness, he's been able to resolve so many issues, again, with our staff, with the community, and a lot of that has been through really education back to the people that were bringing the issues to us, so that they would understand what we were dealing with, how we needed to deal with it, and how they could be a part of the solution with us. So with that, I give you Chad Kettler, our Chief Operating Officer.
Well, good morning, afternoon, not sure what time it is. Isabel, thank you for that welcome or introduction. A terrier and calm don't necessarily go in the same for me, digging, so that's interesting. But this morning, so 10 years, wow, it's been a long time. Isabel mentioned that I was with the former management company, so I've been with CPO from day one. And 10 years is just amazing. Unlike Joyce, who said it seems longer, it seems like just yesterday for me. You've heard this morning from some of our key partners speaking about the need, the impact, and the vision. And, you know, I remember also well when this journey began that failure was not an option. Somebody mentioned that Isabel, you know, touts that. I remember those days very well. Success was the only option. And today we're celebrating that success. We're called community properties, and that's key because it took an entire community to reach this benchmark. We've got our initial focus was on the properties itself, a $130 million investment in really neglected buildings throughout our city's urban neighborhoods. And, you know, in some cases, we were the first to invest in those communities, and others, we were the final piece in an already committed investment. We're grateful for all of those who had helped in this endeavor and shape it to what it's become. And trust me when I say, Isabel mentioned it's not pretty, it wasn't pretty in the early days. I remember days of irate residents, neighbors who lived across the street from us, around the corner, regulatory agencies such as HUD, OFA, the City of Columbus, everyone was feeling the pain and really experiencing firsthand the need to address the issues that were surrounding the Green Door housing, which is the former Broad Street Management. Personally, I was employed with BS Management, pun intended there, when OCCH bought the management company, the real estate, and created the new company, Community Properties of Ohio. I lived that change. And I eat, sleep, and breathe CPO and have for 10 years and continue. I'm excited about the next 10 years. The vision that Isabel Toth and David Campbell brought to our organization motivated me. It motivated a staff that we had that was just as downtrodden as the community. And, you know, their commitment to people, whether it be staff, residents, neighbors, regulators, investors, was a key ingredient in how this work got accomplished. We like to refer to CPO as CPO the love story. And, you know, it was really a challenge for me, like many of the speakers up here today, to condense this to 3 minutes or less, because 10 years is a long time, and there's a lot of things that I could share. But it's taken internally a dedicated staff to make this happen. So I'd like to acknowledge, just recognize, join me in a round of applause for the CPO staff that have done this. So 10 years, and in some ways that is a long time. I want to thank you guys for joining us today to celebrate this milestone, but yet in so many ways we've only just begun. I'm excited for the future of CPO. You've heard residents, Jessica, who just was before me, speak of ways in the video, speak of ways that their lives have been changed. They've actually been transformed, and that's exciting. That's truly the North Star of CPO. We'll continue to maintain the bricks and sticks of our buildings, but hopefully, just as they were the day after rehab. And however, with continued support from our funders and our partners in this great community, we will continue to further our mission of Provide, Link, and Move. And that's to provide quality, affordable housing in integrated, mixed-income urban neighborhoods, link residents with needed services that's going to improve the quality of their lives and help move families and individuals beyond poverty where at all possible. So thank you, and appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Chad. Just a couple of closing comments. On the back of your brochure, your CPO brochure, lists all of the partners. And if you haven't heard the story about how we came up with the name Community Properties, which I think in some ways is so unimaginative, but the story is that, you know, put in an early PowerPoint slide, Isabel and I talk, we come up with another name, but in reality, this is about the community. And if you look at all of our partners on the back, it shows this is really just not an OCCH CPO, it's a community effort, has been pointed out many times. I'd like to point out our development partners we talked about. Our investors, we're actually having an event for our investors to celebrate their $66 million investment in this. Our housing partners, a professional team, Albert M. Higley and Baker Henning Productions. Judy Williams, the historic consultant. Rex Hagling is out there with Moody Nolan. You know, the thing about development, it's not when things are going well, it's when things don't quite go that well that you really find out who the true partners are, and they just did a great job. And we heard some of our other funders. A couple of other things, and then one very important presentation. That didn't go like we planned. This is actually a gift, a wind chime. The winds have changed. It's not as good as putting the neighbors back in neighborhood, but it's still pretty good. Just like to point out a couple of other folks that were so critical. We actually had to get a law passed in Congress to allow us to sell some of these properties for market rate development. Those buildings on 11th, the Wagenbrunner Company will be developing. And Deborah Price and Pat Teaberry worked with ourselves in the Ohio State Governmental Policy Unit to really get that law passed. Absolutely critical partners. But as I said before, Isabel Toth is, Isabel, could you come up here for a sec? She hates this stuff. Yeah, I think you might. I think at the end of the day, we can have great staff, we can have the financial resources, but it's all about leadership. Wanting things to happen is not enough. Desire and commitment are required, but only happen with a great leader. And in Isabel, we have a leader that shares the vision, that has developed the vision, deploys the troops, cajoles, motivates, disciplines, inspires, and shows the love at all times. We've been blessed to have a phenomenal leader in Isabel Toth, and we have a small token of our appreciation. I'd like to lead this, hold the applause, let me read this, and then please, a standing ovation I think would be entirely appropriate. CPO Management, and 10th anniversary, Community Properties of Ohio. You made the difference, you inspired us all, you made it happen, you moved the mountain. An everlasting appreciation for your commitment and leadership of Community Properties of Ohio, Isabel Toth, President. Would you like to say anything?
For once, I'm speechless. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Better take that with you. Thanks so much for coming. We actually have a great luncheon. If you could exit in the back. And I think our tour, please, if you've not been on the bus tour of CPO properties, please do so today, and we'll probably push that back probably about 15 minutes to around 1 o'clock or so. But we'll see you upstairs, and thanks again for coming.